You see, John had a problem. He was by a group of people called the Sentinelese, and nobody did anything about it. You see, the Sentinelese are a tribe of people that live on an island that has no contact with the outside world. But see, John's a missionary and thought, okay, if they don't have contact with the outside world, then they don't know about Jesus in them. So John decides to fly to India since it's close to the Sentinelese people's island. Now, this part's important. The Sentinelese people live on an island called North Sentinel Island. This is part of a larger island chain called the Andaman Islands. But see, the people in the Andaman Islands have contact with the outside world. The people in the Sentinel Islands don't have contact with anybody, not even the people in the Andaman Islands. They are literally all by themselves. As soon as John touches down in India, they say, okay, John, what you here for? John says, I'm just passing through. I'm trying to go to, listen closely, the Andaman Islands. The Indian government says, okay, no problem. But don't go to the Sentinel Islands. That's illegal. You see, the Indian government banned people from going to the Sentinel Island. And you'll find out why in a second. John said, illegal? That's too bad for y'all, because I'm going anyway. John already knew it was illegal. He said, I'm still going. John flies over to the Andaman Island. The people in the Andaman Island said, damn, bro, we don't get too many visitors. What you here for? John said, sightseeing. Can y'all show me where the Sentinel Island's at? They said, we could show you, but you know we can't take you. It's illegal. He said, of course, of course. They said, there go to Sentinel Island right there. It's across the water from us. John said, I bet, I'm finna need a boat. They said, what? He said, I said, LeBron, the goat. John goes over to look for a boat. John finds two fishermen. He said, look, y'all, I need y'all to take me to Sentinel Island. They said, what? You know that's illegal. You gonna pay my bail? John said, I got $400 US. I don't know how much bail costs, but they said, say no more. You have me at US dollars. Hop on the boat. So John and the fishermen approach the Sentinel Island. The Sentinelese people see John and the fishermen pulling up. They start bringing out their bows and arrows, start moving aggressively. They're like, John said, you think they're trying to tell me to pull up? The fisherman said, nah, I think they're trying to tell you to stay here. John said, what y'all know? John hops on a canoe. He gets a little bit closer. Now, at this point, the Sentinelese people, they saying, John said, okay, raise the roof. All right, look, check it out, y'all. I got a Bible here. I just wanted to tell y'all about Jesus. That's when the Sentinelese really get to knucking and bucking. They pull out the bows and arrows. They say, ooh, if you come on this island, ooh. John said, oh, them folk tripping. He leaves. The fisherman said, that's what we was trying to tell you. Them folk like that. John said, so's my Lord and Savior. We're spinning the block and coming back another day. John was not finished. He comes back another day. The fishermen tell him, John, we appreciate the cash, no refunds, but you can't go out there. John said, watch me. John takes the canoe again. He approaches the Sentinelese people. The Sentinelese people look at each other. They say, you stupid. Stay over there. John said, okay, I'm just going to come a little bit closer. He brings out his Bible and starts to sing. He said, how great is... Boom! They shoot an arrow at bro. But the arrow hits John's Bible and he swims away. And here's where things start to get wicked. You see, they didn't accidentally hit John's Bible. That was their target. They didn't want to hurt him. They wanted him to go away. You see, there's a reason why the Indian government made it illegal for people to have contact with the Sentinelese. It's because their immune systems are not built to handle the diseases that humans in the world carry today. And the Sentinelese people know that because this British dude, Maurice, in the 1800s, pulled up to the Sentinel Islands, took 4 people. He gave them smallpox. 2 of them, he said, send the other 2 back to the island. The other 2 were coughing, sick. He said, send them back. Maurice then visits a tribe close by the Sentinelese, wipes out the entire population. Maurice said, damn, he wrote in his diary, yeah, it seems that we get people sick, but we the British since the 1800s, we finna pull up anyway. So after witnessing all this, you can probably understand why the Sentinelese don't want people approaching the island. Now, the crazy part is, despite witnessing all this, the Sentinelese people seem pretty chill. Indian anthropologists visited them in the 90s. Look at bro shaking hands. He said, what's good with y'all? Hey, we don't want y'all visiting, but like, we cool. The Indian people start giving them coconuts. The Sentinelese people like, appreciate y'all. But one of the Sentinelese people brings out some real sharp dough and starts putting it around his heart, saying, One of the Indian anthropologists like, oh, I think we gotta go, y'all. The Sentinelese tribe's like, yes, y'all gotta go, but we appreciate y'all, you know. But unlike those Indian anthropologists, John didn't take the hint and decides to go a 3rd time. And well, that was that. The next time they found John, he was on the beach of the island. The Indian government pulls up to the Andaman Islands. They said, what happened? They said, John went to Sentinel Island. India said, oh. The United States pulls up. They said, what happened to our citizen? You know we don't play. They said, he went to Sentinel Island. United States said, oh, that's that island where you're not supposed to, India said, yeah. We went over to the island too to get his remains for y'all. The Sentinelese people was not having it, but we did manage to get his diary. United States government looked at his diary and said, I know what I'm doing is illegal. If they catch me slipping, don't be mad at the Sentinelese. The United States said, no, we're not mad. The United States and the Indian government figured, well, he was warned a bunch of times. What can you do? In fact, his parents, John's parents, weren't even upset at the Sentinelese or John. They were upset at the evangelical church, who they believe radicalized him. In fact, even after he passed, some members of the evangelical church were praising him, and he became a martyr in some people's eyes. Now, at the end of the day, John got for what he believed in, but to me, he was no different than that dude from the 1800s that went to the Sentinelese island, because even though both men knew what might happen to the Sentinelese people if they went to the island, they went anyway, because in their minds, their beliefs were worth risking the Sentinelese people's lives. But as we saw from what happened to John, the Sentinelese people disagreed.